All right, we ready to go?
Yep.
All right, so we're going to talk about fire extinguishers today. Got a video it's pretty good. It goes over the different types, and then we're going to talk about it. Before we get into this too far, let's talk a little bit about the fire you had here. From what I read and what I understand, we did an absolute great job with this on getting this thing out. Who were the people that were involved with putting that fire out? Let's show me your hands here. Okay, what were some of the challenges you had with that?
Figuring out where it came from when it started.
There was oil that continued burning after it started.
Okay. All right. What was one of the things that you did to get the spray stopped?
Shut the valve on the tank.
Valve on the tank.
Hit the E-stop.
There you go, E-stop. Some of you probably aren't used to being around that, but some good actions went on there, and you got this thing knocked down. What about fire extinguishers? Did you have troubles finding them, or were they close to where you needed to be?
They were close to where they needed to be. However, some people weren't familiar with the plug mill operation, so they didn't know where they were. The guys that worked the plug mill every day knew where they were, but everybody else, not so much.
Okay, all right.
So we had a situation, how many years ago, one of our 3,000 gallon vacuum trucks, right? Tandem axle truck, guy was coming back from the Thumb area, headed back to Kalkaska, had a tire fire. And he just bailed. The extinguisher was right there. And it was what, the left front tire?
I think so.
And he just bailed, burnt the whole truck down. One thing I want to add about this plug mill situation and that fire, that at that point, Dan and the other guys that were out there didn't have time to look at the extinguisher, right? To go, oh, this is going to cover a 40 by 30 area, right? What they did do is they got on the radio and said, bring fire extinguishers, right? And they had, what'd you have, 6 of them over there?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
So.
We had 3 guys spraying it from all different directions too.
Right, so I mean, if it had kept going, at some point they were gonna have to go a different route, but the fact is, they thought enough ahead to get reinforcements brought in, so.
You just don't know when a fire is going to break out. So this is the first that I know of out here that occurred, but it shows we had some good actions with that and got it out. So good thinking. All right, let's start here.
Hey, I know what you're thinking. Another safety training to sit through. And fire extinguishers? I mean, doesn't everyone know how to use a fire extinguisher? Well, actually, no. And when you've got a fire on the job and there's smoke and people yelling, alarms going off, that's not the time to figure it out. You see, fire's a tricky thing. Putting out a fire means knowing something about what's burning, how it burns, and how you can control it and put it out safely. Before we get into it, remember one thing. If a fire is spreading and you don't know what to do or don't think you can control it, get out. Bottom line, we want you safe. All right, today we're going to talk about what makes different fires burn, the 5 different classes of fire, and why you have to use the right type of extinguisher to put out each kind of fire. And we're going to learn about how to inspect an extinguisher to make sure it's ready when you need it, and how to use a fire extinguisher effectively. There's a lot you need to know, so pay attention. All right, let's get to it, starting with how fires burn and what keeps them burning. Here's the basic breakdown. Fires need fuel, oxygen, and enough heat to set it off. This is the key. Take away one of these elements, and the fire goes out. Now, let's talk about the 5 classes of fire. The class of the fire is determined by the source of the fire or type of fuel that's burning. This is important because each class of fire requires a specific type of extinguisher to put it out. The right tool for the job, so to speak. Here we go. Class A. These are combustible solids like wood, paper, rubber, and basically the kind of material found in dumpsters, garbage cans and pallet stacks. Class B, these are flammable liquids like petroleum products, gasoline, oil, paint, solvents, kerosene, etc. These are particularly dangerous because these liquids can be ignited by a flame or a stray spark, and these fires can spread fast. Class C, electrical fires. Energized equipment like power tools, switches, appliances, power boxes are even more dangerous because you've got a live current to deal with. Class D, metal. That's right, some metals are combustible, like magnesium, titanium, even potassium and sodium not only burn at high temperatures, but can react violently with water and some other chemicals. Class K. The K is for kitchens. These are fires that are fueled by cooking oils and kitchen equipment, like deep fryers. In every situation, you have to know the right extinguisher or agent to use, one that's designed for that type of fire. There are a number of different kinds of fire extinguishers specifically designed to deal with the different classes of fire. Multi-purpose dry chemical, carbon dioxide, water, clean agent, wet chemical, and foam. Knowing the type of fire tells you the right kind of extinguisher to use. And it's not all that complicated because the class of fire that each fire extinguisher is designed for is shown right on the faceplate. So, you use a type A extinguisher for a Class A fire, a type B for a Class B, a type C for a Class C fire, and so on. Now, that makes sense, doesn't it? Now, some extinguishers are labeled BC, like carbon dioxide, or ABC, like a multi-purpose dry chemical extinguisher. That means they can put out all those classes of fire. The label will also tell you what classes of fire you should not use that type on. For example, never use a type A extinguisher on an electrical or Class C fire. The water or foam applied from this type of extinguisher can conduct electricity, which means you could be electrocuted. It's simple. Match the type of extinguisher with the class of fire and you're set. But you've got to know how to use them correctly and effectively. If not, your chances of controlling and putting out a fire are pretty slim. So let's get into it. Most common types are simple to use. You've probably heard of the PASS method. This stands for pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. Stand back about 8 feet from the fire. Hold the unit upright. Pull out the safety pin, free the hose, and aim it at the base of the fire. Then just squeeze the discharge lever while you sweep the stream of extinguishing agent from side to side to completely cover the area until the fire's out. Now that's the basics, but there are some specific detailed techniques for handling different types of fires. With a fire fueled by paper, trash, or rubbish, in other words, a Class A fire, you should thoroughly cover the burning materials with the extinguishing agent to put out the fire. Whether you're using a multi-purpose dry chemical or a water extinguisher, you then need to use a shovel or rake to turn over the debris, checking for any remaining hot spots, and respray those areas. Class B or flammable liquid fires can flare up when you first hit them with the extinguisher spray. Don't let it throw you. Just start at the nearest edge and work it across the burning surface. Be careful that you do not spread the fire with the extinguisher stream. If you're using foam, make sure it completely blankets the fire so it can form a layer on top of the flammable liquid. Stop your foam stream every so often and allow the foam layer to blanket the surface of the burning liquid. Apply more foam as needed until the fire is out. If you have to put out a Class C fire that is near computers or electrical equipment, you should use a carbon dioxide or a clean agent fire extinguisher. Carbon dioxide extinguishers look like this and discharge, yep, carbon dioxide or CO2. The CO2 displaces the oxygen in the air and the fire goes out. Clean agent extinguishers use an environmentally friendly chemical that puts out the fire without the hazards of water or without the possibility of damaging sensitive electronic equipment. A multi-purpose dry chemical extinguisher will work on a Class C fire, but these will leave behind a residue that can harm electrical equipment. Class D fires involving combustible metals need a special kind of extinguisher that looks like this. Look for the star on the label and check with your supervisor for any special firefighting instructions for the type of metal that you're working with in your area. To fight a Class D fire, you should start about 3 feet away from the fire and smother the burning metal with the extinguishing agent. Pause for a moment, check for any hot spots, and reapply as needed. Be sure to wait for the metal to cool before you sweep up the debris. That brings us to the Class K extinguisher. Class K extinguishers, also known as wet chemical extinguishers, are found in commercial kitchens and are specifically designed for the types of fires that can start in cooking appliances, like deep fat fryers. These types of fires are hard to control because of the high temperature of the cooking oil and the insulated design of the equipment that keeps the heat in the fryer. The key is to smother the fire and cool down the oil. If you have a fire in a deep fryer, the first thing you need to do is activate your fixed fire suppression system if it isn't automatic, and back away from the fire area. If the fixed system doesn't work, then you can use the Type K extinguisher. When you discharge a Type K extinguisher, the liquid is dispensed as a fine mist and mixes with the cooking oil to create a soapy foam. The foam layer smothers the fire, while the liquid reduces the temperature of the oil. You need to completely discharge the extinguisher to ensure that the fire doesn't reignite as the oil is cooling. If there's a fire in your work area, you're going to need to find an extinguisher in a hurry, right? If you look around, you will usually see a fire extinguisher within 50 to 75 feet. Now, in more hazardous locations, like storage areas that contain flammable liquids, or refueling areas, or areas where welding or cutting is being performed, this distance should be 30 feet. And of course, you will usually find a fire extinguisher at every exit. Your employer has probably selected and placed the right types of extinguishers in the right locations for the types of fires you're most likely to have at your workplace. It's a good idea to take a look and make sure that they haven't been switched around or are missing. You don't want to have to figure this out when you see a fire. So anytime you start work in a new area, take a minute to find out where the fire extinguishers are located. It's easy, and it could mean a world of difference in a fire emergency. Fire extinguishers need to be inspected on a regular basis. Your company probably has a routine for this procedure. Here's what needs to be checked. Make sure the extinguisher is easily accessible and not blocked by anything. Check the seal. Make sure it hasn't been broken or tampered with. Make sure the pin, nozzle, hose, and faceplate are intact. And if it has a gauge like this, make sure it reads fully charged. Check the tag to see if the service schedule is up to date. The service date should be within the past year. If the extinguisher has been used, or even if the seal is broken, you need to treat it as if it is empty. Just take it to your supervisor to get it refilled. That brings us to an important point. Let your supervisor know anytime you have a problem with an extinguisher, or if you see one is missing, empty, or damaged. Again, a little action on your part can make a big difference down the road, even save a life. All right, that's your fire extinguisher 101. But what should you do when you see a fire?
Hey, we got a fire in the shop. You got to get out. Come on.
First, alert the folks around you so they can shut down the equipment and get out of the building. Then you need to activate the building fire alarm or have someone call 911 to get the fire department rolling in case the fire cannot be put out with a fire extinguisher. Next, you have to decide if you can put it out yourself. If it's too big or getting out of control, an extinguisher may not put it out. Don't be a dead hero. Sometimes the best thing to do is get out of the area. If you choose to fight the fire with an extinguisher, always make sure you have a safe escape route away from the fire. So here's the drill. Start by alerting people in the area. Just yell fire and make sure that you're heard. Then pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, and squeeze the discharge lever. Sweep the stream of extinguishing agent from side to side and cover the fire area until the fire is completely out. Now remember, all fires, big or small, need to be reported, and any extinguishers that were used should be considered empty and need to be refilled. It really comes down to being aware, like being aware of the fire extinguishers in your area, being aware of what types they are, and whether they are fully charged and ready to use. So keep your eyes open and pay attention. Knowing what you know about fires and fire extinguishers can make a big difference in your safety and the safety of the folks that work with you.
Okay. Questions on this? I know this is probably some stuff you've never seen before, the K fires, the D fires. Has anybody been around any of those at all here? Most of these D fires is like magnesium. A lot of vehicles, the more foreign ones, came with like magnesium wheels, and they're really hard to put out. What it doesn't show you, what you can do is you can use dirt for those. On this side, I don't know of anything that would even come relatively close to that. So you don't really have to worry about it. So let's, we got the handouts here. Let's talk about that a little bit. The four most common types are what? Your A, your B, your C. They put D in there, but that's pretty rare. What would you classify the fire you had here in? What category would you put that?
I'd say it was a C and a B.
And then of course our D is our combustible and our K is our liquid. What's the most common fire extinguisher we have? ABC, absolutely. Dry chem. It's made for the three most common fires out there. You got to anticipate the potential hazards and be sure to match to the type of fire extinguisher. So why do we get ABC fire extinguishers? It matches everything you pretty much have out here. There's nothing odd hanging out there. There is those wet chemicals. We don't have any of those here. We do have a C. I brought a C. We have two in the company, so you get a view of that. These are super expensive. We would put that like in a trailer like this. You can use them on A fires. It'll remove the oxygen. It'll displace it. Those can become a dangerous fire extinguisher. You're in a confined space. You're in a closed room. Be very careful using that because you're removing the oxygen out. So rating systems. How do we know our fire extinguisher, what it's rated for? Does anybody know how you find that out? Okay. What's that, Dan?
It says on the label.
It says on the label. That is the only way you will know that. And most people, as in here we see, we don't know it, so that's what we're here for. So here, this is what size? It's a 5-pounder. It says there, it's 5 pounds. But what capabilities does this fire extinguisher have? It's a 3A. A is what? What type of fire? Wood paper. 40 BC. So what that means is they make these cribs. It's 30 inches by 30 inches by 30 inches. That's a crib. If you want to remember what it equals in water, a 1A is equal to 1 gallon, 0.25. So a 4 is equal to what? 4A, 5 gallons. So that gives you the idea in water what an extinguisher is capable of for the A side. Okay, you with me? This gets confusing, it really does. That's why I brought these sheets out for you. So let's talk about the B fire. They do pan sizes and they fill it with heptane. That's a big component in gasoline. That's what they use. So here, a 1B is equal to a 2.5 square foot, to where most of these you get the 10B, so that's a 25 square foot pan with a 1/2 inch of material in it. That's what that extinguisher should be capable of putting out. 20B, you see you got a 50, you get pretty good size. you get a pretty good size fire going there. And then a 40B, 100 square feet. That's pretty big. That's 10 by, you got 10 by 10 going on there. That's pretty big fire going there, and that's hot. So that gives you your rating system. All right, and as I said earlier, what do these rate out at? So looking at it, does this 5-pounder have the same capability as that one? You have to read the label. So this is a 3A 40 BC, 3A 10 BC. So this is something you really need to understand, and especially in these sizes, our trucks that we carry the portable tanks in, you got to have a 20 BC rated fire extinguisher in that. That's OSHA standards. Most of the 10s we don't have anymore. I believe there's a few flying around yet, but we have removed them from service. We actually got cited for that by OSHA. So you gotta look at that extinguisher, what it is in the smaller sizes, if you're using that as your primary fire extinguisher for that truck. The big ones, the 20-pounders, those I looked in our shop, they're 10As, but they're 120 BC. You have a lot of firefighting power there with those big fire extinguishers. And they're geared for that reason, for those P-class fires. So, but again, you gotta look. You gotta look at that back of that fire extinguisher, what that thing's rated for. Something in the video that, I don't know if you noticed, when you're using these dry chems, where do you want the wind? To your back. Absolutely, you want it to your back. And when you start to use that extinguisher, start it in front of the fire. I've seen these where you start energizing that and it'll flare air out. You don't get that chemical agent out right away. So give it a blast before, on these chemical fires, before you start using that. Otherwise, you're going to add more air to that. And I've seen it where it actually was in training where somebody did that and it happened and that fuel just blew out and went all over the place. So start it in front of yourself there. All right. So I talked about, when do we use one? Are we capable of managing that fire? You got to make that decision on your own. If it's got you scared, got you worried, get out. Extinguishers, the common myth is extinguishers are designed to put fires out. That's true, but the main reason focus is to get you out of that area. So you go in these structures, our buildings, you take our main office, you look at the fire extinguishers throughout there. That's to put a fire out to get the people out. It's not to put the fire out. Get out of the building if you can't handle it. Okay? And what system do we use? What system when we're using one? Pass. Pass system. Absolutely. All right, we match the fire extinguisher to the fire. Like I said, our ABCs, you got yourself covered here. We do that for you here. Proper placement. The machines, where are they in the machines that we're operating? Do we know exactly where they're at? We do. Okay. They're not buried with clothes over the top of them. And it's happened. I can tell you it's happened. But no, we need to know what you got. And do you check them monthly? You check them weekly? No? You check them, what was that?
Check them every day.
There you go.
I'm looking right at them, you walk past them.
There you go. Check it every day. Because you can get it, like these, they got the gauges on. That looks like brand new one, which it pretty much is, but the gauge will be down. You don't know what you got there. Time to say goodbye. You gotta get that replaced out there. So our inspections, who does the inspections? Everybody? For the main part, everybody does the inspections, right? Okay. Rust. If we got rust on a fire extinguisher, that becomes a dangerous fire extinguisher, especially if it's pitted. It can break apart. We want to remove that from service. I don't know of any here. Frankie, you see any rust on these big? Don't be afraid to, especially the ones that are in those stands, pull them up and look at the bottom. Take it, pull it, shake it, put it back in. Because the rust, they will come apart. This one here, that's 850 pounds of pressure in there. Yes, 12 seconds you can dump that whole bottle. It comes out fast, and it's a cryogenic. It can give you frostbite, so it's high pressure, and they test that bottle at like 3,000 psi.
Keith was a rescue fireman for how many years?
Actively, right at 30. I'm still on. I'm just kind of unremembered at a city in Cedar Lake, Indiana. They still let me come around, but still am. I'm in the 47th year now. Yeah, I got on when I was 20, so that tells you how old I am. All righty. Well, thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.